Our mother, Lady Zahra salawatullah alayha, is a majlis of our mother. A mother that many times we talk about that she was martyred for Ali ibn Abi Talib and Imamat. True. A mother that we say she was martyred for Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. True. But maybe this point we didn't take notice that a mother that was martyred for you. How was she martyred for you? To preserve the correct path for you to be here today, she was Shahida. So that today you can know what path is right. She gave from her holy blood. So that we can know right from wrong. Is this anything else than this? For the guidance, the Imams were already guided. They did not need the mother to be Shahida. But she had to tell and inform and show the world that the newly established government in the Khilafat is batil, it's wrong. And the only way for her to do this was to give from herself and become a Siddiqa, a Shahida, as the narration in Al-Kafi says, to become a martyrdom for us, even though we say we truly don't deserve it. We don't think that any amount of harassment or violence that befell Sayyidah Fatima, for us, we don't deserve it. But today we are here because she, one of her last du'as, when you look at the narration, one of her last du'as when they come to her, and she makes du'a for the forgiveness of the Shia, the sinners of the Shia. So she was thinking of us. So I want you to tell the community, to other people, to come to the majlis of Sayyidah Fatima. Come these nights, and believe me, someone that is here for 4 nights, not because of me. Actually, I'm the worst part of this majlis. But because it's the name of this holy lady, we truly need in this country where we live, we truly need the nur and light of the Sayyidah. So come and tell your family members. I know that it is, holidays, there are days off, but tuba lakum, how congratulations to you that you let go of whatever was happening in the country you live in, and you come instead, you trade it for Sayyidah Fatima. This is one of the best actions that we can do. One of the scholars was saying this, it was so beautiful. He says, every time I go to the Rosa and the Majlis of Ahlul Bayt, I feel as if the entire world is being governed by this Majlis. I feel that the entire world is revolving around the Majlis of Ahlul Bayt. Then he says, why would it not be true? Because Imam al-Zaman, do you think he would be indifferent to the Rosa and Majlis of his mother Az-Zahra? Do you think he would be indifferent? When he is the center of creation, and he has inayat, and he has awareness, and he blesses and knows of those majalis, why would not these majalis be the center of the command of the world? Sometimes we forget that good has a much better effect than evil. If somebody in this culture does haram or does something, it has its own effect. But that nur, that capability that each and every one of you can have in society, that nur that you can have, why? Because it's the nur of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, it's the nur of Quran, it's the nur of Allah. So how much can you influence each other? Just the fact you come to the majlis of the Sayyidah, the Shahida, and you go home and you talk about what happened, you cry for her. How much of an effect in reality, if we were to know, does this have? So these are very powerful and important majalis that we have. That is why so much our ulama and scholars has always emphasized to make this day, in at least countries like Iran, to make this day a day where there is no work. It is a national holiday to remember the martyrdom of our mother Az-Zahra. How the poet says that whoever loves Imam Hussein alayhi salam can call Imam Hussein's mother their mother. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal fajr. So Fatimiyya is what? It is the time period of the martyrdom of this Sayyidah, this holy lady. And I'm going to give an introduction, even though I was thinking to jump into the, lecture that I've already prepared, but sometimes I get questions, or I see in the community there are questions. I have to address these to let it know, to be known, and to let these historical facts be present, that what happened to her. Is it true that after the Prophet of Islam passed away, they came to the house of his daughter and attacked her? Is it true or not? I don't know how many people here have researched this, but tonight I want to give you briefly a little bit about the status of this holy lady and talk about the historical facts that yes, what happened to Sayyidah Fatima is true. We wish it wasn't true. I wish it wasn't true. But it's recorded in strong books of history, recorded in multiple sources in a way that you cannot deny that this Sayyidah was abused. You cannot deny that the Sayyidah was Shaheeda. The first thing I want to go over is that we heard in the Quran, and we read in 342, وَإِذْ قَالَتْ الْمَلَائِكَ يَا مَرْيَمُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اسْتَفَاكِ وَطَهَّرَكِ وَاصْطَفَاكِ عَلَى نِسَاءِ الْعَالَمِينَ. And when the angels said, O Maryam, Allah has chosen you and purified you, and He has chosen you above the world's women, that this holy and immaculate lady, Maryam, is of course a lady of great character and one of the holiest ladies that we have. The mother of Isa alayhi salam, the mother of Jesus, mother of a child that was born without a father, a mother of a child that gave life to the death with Allah's permission, cured the sick with Allah's permission, performed miracles with Allah's permission, that today we believe is alive, and Allah raised him to the sky, and that he one day, as Muslims believe that Jesus will come back with Imam Mahdi, we believe this. She is one of the most purest and best. But from these 11, 12, or 13 ladies mentioned in the Quran, we also have narrations, though, that make it clear that Inna Maryam Sayyida Nisa'i Alimiha wa Anna Fatima Sayyidatu Nisa'al Alameen. That Sayyida Fatima, Lady Maryam, was the best and chief of women at her time period. There's no doubt about it. But Sayyidah Fatima is the highest in position of all ladies. Let that be clear to you tonight. That if you say which is the highest of ladies in the world, from Shia sources, from Sunni sources, none other than Sayyidah Fatima. The narration in Bukhari makes it very clear, because the narration in Sahih Bukhari says, أما ترضين أن تكوني سيدة نساء أهل الجنة, Hadith 3623 or 24 in Sahih Bukhari. Are you not satisfied that you are the chief of all ladies of paradise? What does it mean when someone is the chief of ladies of paradise? Because paradise is when everyone arrives in paradise. It's different than to be Sayyidat Nisa'al Alameen in your time period. Because in heaven, all the holy ladies will be there. Therefore, there's no doubt that tonight we're remembering the best of all ladies that has ever been created, because also the daughter of the best of men that were ever created, Rasulullah. Let's give a salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Another narration that we can understand the position, and again, we don't claim to understand the position of Hazrat Fatima. It takes someone like Imam Ali and Rasulullah to understand her. As you look in this hadith, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَقُولُ لَوْ لَمْ أَخْلُقْ عَلِيًّا عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ لَمَا كَانَ لِفَاطِمَةَ ابْنَتِكَ كُفْوًا عَلَى وَجْهِ الْأَرْضِ. If Ali alayhi salam was not created, there would not have been a kuf. What's a kuf? A peer. Someone that is in the same position as someone else that is your peer. If Ali alayhi salam was not created, Sayyidah Fatima would not have a husband. What does that mean? It means they are kuf of one another. What does it mean when two are kuf of one another? They're peers. It means basically they're at the same level. They're at the same level. So whatever manaqib you give of Amir al-Mu'mineen of Ali alayhi salam, you're also praising Sayyidah Fatima at the same time, because she's the kuf of Ali. Whenever you have the manaqib, and how many manaqib and fada'il and virtue of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam do we have? Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who wrote Musnad, many thousands of narrations, mentions that no Sahabi has the manaqib of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So it's clear, Ali alayhi salam, actually in the Sunni sources there's a narration. It says, well, who is the greatest of Sahabi, who is the greatest of companions? He gives a list, this person, Fulan, 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 Fulan. He says, you didn't mention Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says, you asked about his companions. You didn't ask about the nafs of Rasulullah. You didn't ask about the soul of Rasulullah. He's in a different category. Sunni narrations, it says. And the verse that Brother Doctor that just read in Mubahila says this. Anfusana wa anfusakum, bring yourselves. And Ali was brought as the nafs, as the soul of Rasulullah, according to Shia Sunni narrations. So when you have that manaqib of Ali alayhi salam, in the same way you say that she is the kuf of Ali. Actually, when you look at the narrations, when Imam Ali was married to her, with her, and asked about her in marriage, he says, Ni'mal aun ila ta'atillah. She is the best helper in God's obedience. Ali alayhi salam, can anybody help you in the obedience of God? What position did Sayyidah Fatima have that can help you in worship God? Because they were kuf, and she was a completion of Ali alayhi salam, male and female, they're a completion of one another. She was ni'mal aun ila ta'atillah. She helped Ali alayhi salam, the best of help in obeying God. So these are narrations that I mentioned about a little bit of the virtue of the Sayyidah. Let's get into historical sources to see what happened during this time period. I'm going to go over different sources, and again, I'm not limit myself to Shia sources. I'm going to give historical sources. One of the things I would like to mention before I start is one of our great scholars by the name of Ayatollah Muhammad Baqir Sadr, who was a shaheed and killed. He has the statement in Usul, in Al-Rijal, that when a narration or hadith comes from another madhab, when a narration comes from another madhab and it goes against their own beliefs, that helps us in the speed of tawatur. That helps us to reach tawatur and yaqeen faster. For example, if in Sunni sources there's a narration that goes against the Khilafat, it means it's much more valuable to us, sometimes we can say, than maybe some other narrations, because it's going against their own beliefs. It means that this must be true, because a person generally does not narrate something against his own self, unless he has to. So when you see in Sunni sources that there was this attack, it's already embarrassing the Khilafat. That's why some people, when it comes to this attack, they just said they either censor it, or they say according to other things, falanun wa falan wa kada wa kada, even though this is not a place of kada wa kada. Kada kada is used when something is very long, and this was not very long. I'll give you examples hopefully later. Or it's unimportant to say kada wa kada. Why did they do kada wa kada? Because it's going to incriminate themselves. It's going to incriminate. So when you see sources in Sunni literature that you see that, of course, this must have happened. But does this cause us, for division between Shia and Sunni? No. We, alhamdulillah, are mature enough to agree that there is mutual coexistence. We should live in harmony. We should not allow Fatimiyya to separate Shia and Sunni because we are, from one religion, alhamdulillah. But it means that we're mature enough to look at these historical facts and to research them, and just have the same ulama that we have that promoted unity. They also had majlis for Sayyidah Fatima, but in the correct way, not in a way that you attack or you mention, for example, the leaders, and you some way abuse them in different ways, or you use vulgar language against them. That's not allowed. Our maraja have not allowed such a thing. But it can come as an academic way. It can come in a way that you are mature enough that you say, this is my beliefs, and these are the sources for it. Unity does not mean that your beliefs become one. Nobody says unity between Shia and Sunni means you all have to have one belief. No, we have different belief, but we have mutual respect and coexistence with one another, and how we have been doing for 1400 years ago, before a lot of these foreign powers became to drive and to cause, sectarianism inside our countries. So keep this in mind. Is a Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam is not a source of sectarianism. No. We can, in a way, express it and explain it in a responsible way, in a way that also causes us, each other, to investigate. So the first source I'm going to bring is this. The first source in history from Tabari and Iqd al-Farid, these are old books, okay? Tabari passed away maybe around 200, 300 after Hijri. This is a time period before, say, there are Shia governments that can influence these things. The Shias did not have power. What does Tabari say? The first category of narrations about Fatimiyya is the threat. First category is they threaten to burn her house down. That is the first category. So category 1, if I ask you, tonight what are the 5 categories of narrations and historical evidence about Fatimiyya? The first category is they threaten to set her house on fire, which is already bad enough. What kind of government is that you threaten even? You even mention that by name, that I want to burn your house down. What kind of government is that? Where is the tawfiq and barakat going to go after that? Nowhere. The second type of narration, so the first narration I'll read for you, they said, O daughter of the Prophet, I didn't love anyone as much as I loved your father, nor anyone after him is more loving to me as you, but I swear by Allah, if these people assemble here with you, because there are those that did not want to give allegiance to the government, they're inside the house of Sayyidah Fatima. If you allow these people, if these people assemble here with you, then this love of mine would not prevent me from setting your house on fire. Where? Tabari, History of Tabari, Iqd al-Farid. The second category of historical evidence about the abuse and the attack of Sayyidah Fatima's house is the narrations of Fatila. What does Fatila mean in Arabic? Those who speak Arabic? Fatila. Yes. Like the torch, something to set something on fire. Fatila, right? Fatila, yes. Oh, okay. What does it mean in Farsi? What's the good translation? Like an igniter. A wick, something to ignite, right? Fatila. And that's what they would use to set fire. It doesn't matter fire. You don't have to bring a lot of fire to set something on fire. Even with a fatila, something weak ignition, you can turn it on. So then we have this narration. But now this narration is from a very strong book. I don't know if anyone here has heard of Ansab al-Ashraf. Has anybody here heard of this book of history? Ansab al-Ashraf. It's a book when Europeans wanted to study Islam. It's one of the earlier books that they translated in English because it's such an important book. Ansab al-Ashraf of Baladhuri. Ahmad ibn Yahya al-Baladhuri, Mutawaffa, 279 Hijri. And he was actually one of the eminent Middle Eastern historians. He spent most of his life in Baghdad, enjoying great influence in the court of the Khalif Mutawakkil. He was in the court of Mutawakkil. He was Abbasi. He was at that time. So therefore, it says that he lived in Al-Musta'in, and he was the tutor of the son of one of the Khulafa. It says, Inna falalan arsala ila Ali yuridu al-bay'a. They sent for Ali alayhi salam. Falam yubayin. Ali alayhi salam did not. And where Baladhuri Ansab al-Ashraf. Faja'a falan wa ma'ahu fatila. So now there's a difference. What is the difference when you have, actually one of the things I did not mention here, the second category was actually to prepare firewood. The second category is because of time also, and I forgot. The second category is to prepare firewood. They prepared it. So the first was to threaten, the second was to prepare, and the third was to bring a fatila, to bring something to ignite it. So وَمَعَهُ fatila فَتَلَقَّتْهُ فَاطِمَةَ عَلَى الْبَابِ. And as Lady Fatima came, and she says, فَقَالَتْ فَاطِمَةَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ فَلَانْ أَتَرَاكِ مُحْرِقًا Alayya Babi, do I see you? You want to set my house on fire? And he answered, Na'am. Na'am, yes. Yes, I want to do it. So this is the third category in Baladuri and Ansab al-Ashraf. The Shias do not have any power or influence over Baladuri. He is, as again, in the courtyard of Mutawakkil, a strong historical source. So you see, narrations in Tabari about the threat, narrations about preparing the hizum, we say in Farsi, preparing the firewood, and the third is Fatila. Then we have narrations that talk about the details of the attack. And some of them like Jovaini and Fara'id al-Simtain bring, and it talks about the details. And the fifth that brings us about what happened to our Sayyid al-Shahida is in Mu'jam al-Tabarani, another historical source, that actually they admit, the first Khalifa admits that he does this. The first Khalifa admits. It says in Mu'jam al-Tabarani, again another Sunni source, فَوَدِدْتُ أَنِّي لَمْ أَكُنْ كَشَفْتُ بَيْتَ فَاطِمَةَ وَتَرَكْتُ. I wish I did not investigate or open the house of Fatima and I left it alone. So this is the fifth, that he admits. Some books have in this, I believe Kitab al-Amwal, another important book, says kada wa kada. Doesn't mention, says kada wa kada. I wish that I did not do three things. And this one it comes to kada wa kada. Censorship. So 5 categories, and I want you to remember this, inshallah, for the rest of your lives. If anyone asks about the attack on Sayyidah Fatima's house, these 5 in historical, not again, I didn't mention any Shia sources yet. So about threat, preparation of wood, fatila, and then the attack, and the 5th is admitting to it that this happened. We even have scholars, I don't want to say scholar, like we have people, Rajal, like Ibn Taymiyyah, for example, the leader of the Salafists. If you go to Saudi Arabia today, or Arabia, maybe you shouldn't even say Saudi Arabia, so you say Arabia, you'll see many books wherever you go of Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Taymiyyah. He wrote 8 volumes against Shia. Allama Hilli wrote Miftah al-Karama, 2 volumes. He wrote 8 volumes against us. The books, the hadith of Imam Ali, he kept saying weak, weak, weak. And he even mentioned bad things about Sayyidah Fatima in his book. And Sunni says he's Nasabi. Sunni says that's it. And they said that he's a Nasabi, someone who has hatred of Ahlul Bayt. So he admits, even Ibn Taymiyyah, إِنَّهُ كَبَسَ الْبَيْتِ, that kabasa, again we ask those that speak Arabic, who is a kabas? Someone does kabasa, is someone who raids, comes into someone's house. So إِنَّهُ كَبَسَ الْبَيْتِ, he says, Fulani he went and raided the house, he says it. But then he tries to justify, and it shows his hatred for Ahlul Bayt. What does he say? See, لِيَنْظُرْ هَلْ فِيهِ شَيْءٌ, I apologize for even reading this. هَلْ فِيهِ شَيْءٌ مِّن مَالِ اللَّهِ الَّذِي يَقْسِمُهُ. Is there anything from Mal Allah? Is there any stolen money there? So he can go and distribute it to مَنْ لِمُسْتَحَقِّ, to whoever deserves that money. It says he opened and raided the door, the house, to see if there's any stolen property in there. Astaghfirullah. As if Imam Ali and Sayyidah Fatima would steal people's money, and he had to break someone's house to go over and investigate, which is against the, obviously the maqam and the position of Sayyidatun Nisa al-Alameen. Ali ibn Abi Talib, nafs of the Prophet. Quran says you cannot search to do tajassus, to research and investigate someone's house. God forbid someone even comes, this isn't even a good example. Someone comes to your home, say, and cleans their house, and you're missing something. Can you go through their purse? Can you go through their things and says, oh, let me check you, I'm missing this, and maybe you stole it? No, you're not allowed to do that. The basic mu'min has this ihtiram and this respect. How come for Sayyidah Fatima, he does not have that respect, and he tries to justify why? Because he admitted it happened, so he thought of a good excuse. And actually, sometimes you have this example that the justification is worse than the thing itself. That here he exposed himself. So innahu kabasa. Again, supporting the fifth is that that this happened after his afterwards. So this is Fatimiyya according to historical source. Again, these nights is not just going to be a history, but I thought that this is something needed in the community because sometimes people, because again of sectarianism or different things that they're afraid to mention these historical debates. These 5 categories of narrations and historical facts. Now, what is the implementation or implication of Sayyidah Fatima's stance? When you look, what does this mean for us in terms of when you want to develop our ideology, our beliefs? What does Fatimiyya prove for us? One of the great ulama, Ayatollah Safi, mentioned that Fatimiyya is Ashura. I think that's the title of his book. Fatimiyya is Ashura. It's like Ashura of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It's a rebellion. What does it mean? I want you to think about this. What does it mean when she did not do bay'ah, when she did not do allegiance? What does it mean for us? When you want to decide which path is correct, and she gave her life for this, what does it mean for you 1400 years later? What does it mean? What is one of the best ways if somebody asks you, why I'm a follower of Ali alayhi salam after, and I believe that Imam Ali alayhi salam was chosen? I'm going to mention this after I mention 3 hadith. Once I was in Arabia myself, and I mentioned this, I learned from my teacher, this triangle argument. He said, this is a triangular argument. And I had a bunch of, when I went to Hajj, I had a bunch of flashcards. I was a young student, and I had a bunch of flashcards prepared, and I bought this many books when I went to Hajj. I like debating and discussing and stuff like that. So I did not, when I got into some discussions with some of the, scholars there, first, the story is that I wanted some free books. To be honest, I wanted some free books. And I said, maybe they're going to give it to me. And we just had a discussion, and then it got into such a situation that they even brought one of their masters of aqa'id and belief in the hawza, because there's an important hawza in Medina called Jama'atul Islami, or Jama'atul Islamiyya, and Jama' al-Islami. And there he came, 2 of their shuyukh, and says, look, I have read your books, I have them, I've read them, Shaykh Tusi's books, this book, Istibsar, Tahdhib, whatever. I have them and I've read them. And I was, not that stupid to say this is what I believe. I would just say, this is what I've been told, this is what they say, or else I knew there's another position in the Baghi that I've heard that, underground, they'll take you and you'll never come back from there. So I was careful of that. I just said, this is what they believe. And one of the arguments that I mentioned, and he did not have an answer, and after talking, he actually said, I have to go home. And some of the students were listening too. In this argument that we had, one of the things we talked about was Hadith al-Thaqalain, Kitabullah wa Itrati. It says a Sahih Hadith, and Albani, Nasr Albani says it's Sahih. He says Sahih. Then all the students were like, Sahih, Thaqalain, that the Prophet says, I leave you 2 things, God. It says, Kitabullah, the book of God, Quran, and family. I leave these 2 things, which are basically equal to one another. A huge meaning out of this, indication out of this. Then the second part was this. I said, there's this argument here that don't you say, أَمَا تَرْضَيْنَ أَن تَكُونَ سَيِّدَةَ نِسَاءِ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ, that in Bukhari, once you bring a narration in Bukhari, there's no way you can refute it. Nobody even questions. Some say questioning a book in Sahih Bukhari is equal to kufr, disbelief. You don't question Bukhari. So I mentioned this first. Doesn't Bukhari say, Sayyidatu Nisa al-Ahli al-Jannah? What does that mean? That whatever she did the best. She was the best Muslimah ever. That she could not make any mistakes. Right? Doesn't that mean she could not make mistakes in critical areas at least? Narration 1. Then I said, what about this narration? وَمَنْ مَاتَ وَلَيْسَ فِي أُنُقِهِ بَيْعًا مَاتَ مَيْتَةً جَاهِلِيَّةً. And whoever dies and does not have bay'ah, what's bay'ah mean? Allegiance. Whoever dies and does not have allegiance dies the death of jahiliyyah, dies the death of the days of ignorance, as a person was in the days of ignorance with the mushrikeen and polytheists exist. This narration is a Muslim. This is Sahih Muslim narration, 4562, book 20. You can look this up if in the book of government, Kitab al-Imara. So in Sahih Muslim, again, Muslim, they usually do not, even when Albani, and I don't want to bore you with this, some people like this, some people don't, but even Nasr Albani, who was one of the most contemporary muhaddithin of Ahl Sunnah, when he went through all the narrations and divided them into Sahih and Da'if, weak and strong, he didn't touch Bukhari and Muslim out of respect. All the other books he touched. He says Sahih. He did not, out of respect, to say a narration, Bukhari or Muslim can even be Da'if. So there's no need, basically. So if you mention something from Bukhari and Muslim, it's finished in terms of sanad. So this is the second thing. What does this mean? I ask you. If you say that if somebody dies without bay'ah, they died the death of ignorance. So question is, did she have bay'ah or not? Is it possible that, God forbid, to even say this, that she died the death of ignorance? Of course not. So she must have had allegiance. She must have had allegiance, yes or no, from this. Or else it's equal to the death of ignorance. So she must have had allegiance, but of who? So far we know she made the right choice from Hadith 1. We know she made the right choice because if she didn't, she wouldn't be the best of ladies. The best of ladies does not make the wrong choice. The second, she must have done bay'ah, but with who? Who did she do bay'ah with? And look at the process of elimination. Two main candidates at that time, Ali alayhi salam, Abu Bakr. Two main candidates at that time. Did she do bay'ah of Abu Bakr or not? The hadith number 3. And this one is in Bukhari. فَوَجَدَتْ Fatima. فَوَجَدَتْ, Arabic means what? To become angry. How can you become angry with your own? If you're the best of ladies, you're going to submit to your khadif, right? She became angry with Abu Bakr. فَوَجَدَتْ Fatima ala Abi Bakr fi dhalika, about her argument about Fadak. فَهَجَرَتْهُ. So she kept away from him. How can you keep away from someone that you do allegiance with? It's impossible. You cannot do that. فَلَمْ تُكَلِّمْهُ. She did not speak with him حَتَّى تُوَفِّيَتْ, until she passed away. She did not speak. She kept away from him and was angry. So obviously from this you understand that was not her choice. Her choice was not Abu Bakr. So from the process of elimination, you say she made the best choice. Hadith 1, she is the best of ladies, so she made the correct choice. Hadith number 2, she must have made a choice. In hadith number 3 means that her choice was not Abu Bakr, it was Ali alayhi salam, process of elimination. So this is one of the strong arguments that we have that disproves the system of Khilafat, because you say in the Day of Judgment they ask you, why is this system not right for you? So because Sayyidah Fatima was Sayyidat Nisa al-Ahl Jannah, and this was not the choice that she made. I want to follow her because she's the daughter of Rasulullah. She has the highest of position from all the ladies. Very beautiful argument. And when I mentioned that, he made one comment and then he left. But later on, those that want to ask, I can mention the comment later on. I was supposed to talk about tonight about the government of Imam Ali alayhi salam. I was introduce this topic and we'll talk about the musibah. Lady Fatima has 2 speeches recorded that we have. One is which speech that she has, everyone has heard. Fadak sermon. Does she have another sermon besides this? Yes? Which one? MashaAllah. To the ladies, to the women. She has another khutbah to the women. Also, she has some say there are details in this that make it even more powerful than the khutbah of Fadak. We'll go over this khutbah, inshallah, that she gave to the ladies. She talks about Imam Ali alayhi salam's government and talks about what would have happened if you followed Ali ibn Abi Talib. And she says she's disgusted with the men. She's disgusted with the people of her time because she tested them and they failed. and that she is upset with them because they one day rose their swords for the Prophet of Islam. But when it comes to Ali alayhi salam, they were quiet and they played, she says, with religion. They were playing now. They're not serious. So these ladies can go and tell their husbands, and mentions the qualities and the characteristics of if Imam Ali alayhi salam would have been had the government after them, what would have happened, and everyone would have followed. She's going to mention in detail places that we do not find anywhere else, or other places we find a fewer. And comparing this, we understand it's just like the government of Imam Mahdi, that if Ali alayhi salam's government was successful at that time, and if they would have helped, because Allah is not going to force people. I'll mention the hadith. The example she gives of Kaaba is, of Ali alayhi salam, is like the example of Kaaba. Tu'ta wa la ta'ti. People come to Kaaba. Kaaba does not come to you. You have to go towards Ali alayhi salam. If you want Kamaluddin, if you want Tamamun Ni'mah, you want the perfection of religion, completion, you have to go to Ali, and you have to be willing to sacrifice. And if you do that, Ali will take you to, she mentions later on, a spring, a clear spring of water that will be pleasant, inshallah, for the people. And she'll mention that, inshallah. So come, inshallah, the following night, we'll discuss this, talk about some of the characteristics of the best type of government. And we'll talk about the 5 C's, inshallah, later on. If we can dim the lights, and we'll get into the Rosa of Sayyida Fatima alayhi salam. One of our great ulama mentioned that if he passed away recently and said this, he said, I'm going to say something and maybe people will make fun of me in the newspapers tomorrow. He said that I once thought to myself, and we always talk about the chador, the abaya, the cloak of Sayyidah Fatima, just an article of clothing. He understood Sayyidah Fatima this way and said, if you compare the cloak of her, just this abaya that she had, not her, just her abaya. He said, maybe they'll make fun of me for saying it, but I want you to think about this statement. And you compare it to all of creation, to the universe, the galaxies. He says, this cloak is better than all the stars and planets that exist, the cloak of Sayyidah Fatima. When you look at the narrations, the Shia narrations, we talked about Sunni narrations, historical narrations. When you look at the Shia narrations, it's devastating. I'm so sorry to say this. Ya Imam Zaman, forgive me, but these are a reality. And from one of our books, one of our scholars, he compiled them. And he compiled and says we have 33 sources. First of all, we have in Kafi the narration of that we have from Imam Qadim alayhi salam, Inna Fatimata Siddiqatun Shahida, that she is veracious, very honest, and she is a martyr. She's a shahida. The sources, we have 33 sources that her door was burnt. 33 sources that they did burn her house. 64 sources that she was hit. 64 sources. Different areas that we have. Some in the arm, some in different places. We have 2 sources that say her eyes were injured. In history, she has sources. 24 sources that her ribs were broken. 24 sources. What does it mean when a person's ribs are broken? What does it mean that 75 days, 95 days, whenever the attack happened, multiple attacks, whenever it happened until her martyrdom, it means that every time she inhaled and exhaled, she was in pain. Every time she would try to sleep, she was in pain. 34 sources that she was martyred. 74 sources, narrations, hadith, that Muhsin, her unborn child, was miscarried from being hit. And of these narrations is from the book of Milal wa Nihal, from Shahristani. that Fulani came, ضرب بطن فاطمة يوم البيعة. He came and attacked Sayyidah Fatima. They opened the door of Sayyidah Fatima. She was crushed between the door and the wall. As the poet says, may God's curse, may God forgive the nail. May God forgive the nail that hit the chest, that had in it the secrets of the universe. إن فلانا ضرب بطن فاطمة يوم البيعة حتى ألقت جنين من بطن